Hey, what's up? Welcome to Saturday's Warrior. I have Adam joining me again to review our picks from last week and to make our picks for week 3.
Thanks for having me back, Trevor. Excited to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. I am a little less enthused after how our picks went this last week, but we'll take a look at that. So, yeah, this is going to be a weekly segment that we do throughout the season, reviewing BYU, Big 12, other top 25 matchups, and any other big games that are out there each week, and making our picks for them. And then we'll always come back and review, and we'll keep a running total throughout the season. But so you don't miss any of this, please be sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel so you'll be able to see all these videos as they come out. Also, this week, I'm going to be doing a video with our friends at the Woo Pig Weekly Podcast, and we're going to be breaking down this week 3 game of BYU and Arkansas and taking a look at their team. They do some great analysis, so you'll definitely want to be on for that to hear more about Arkansas and the matchup with BYU this week.
I will be looking at Woo Pig Weekly. This is one of my favorite parts of college football, is just the fan connection, and to hang out, for you to go out and hang out with the Arkansas crowd and to get their analysis on the game sounds awesome. So I'm excited for that.
Yeah, it's really cool. And it's fun. Go check out some of their videos too, because when they're you hear from their angle and they're not trying to pitch it. It's funny because when you come on and they'll obviously want to put a positive light on their team, but when they're talking amongst themselves, you hear that more of the frustrations and things come out. So go check out their channel, but definitely make sure you hit that bell after you subscribe, so you'll be able to see when that video is posted and be able to check out that content. Anyway, we've got a lot to cover, Adam, so let's go ahead and get started. Let's first review our picks from last week, and I put together a little graphic here, and we take a look. I found out just as I was getting ready for this that you can upload slides and review them through StreamYard, but you lose all the animation. So look at the top half. Our picks were pretty similar. Most of these games were very, I think, pretty standard picks. I don't think there was anything surprising there until we get to Cincy and Pitt, and we differed on that. I felt like, Cincy showed that, perhaps they're more than we were expecting, but it was one game against to excuse the term, but inferior opponent. And I was like, I don't want to overreact. I still think at the end of the day, Pitt's going to come out and show, and they didn't, Cincy showed that they've got more.
Yeah. I was hopeful for Cincy, but just because I knew that defense was going to be good, but that offense came through when it counted.
Sure did. So let's look at the other half of the games. Again, we differed a little bit more on this, but I had a lot of these in common. But where we differed, let's look at Texas, Alabama. I just thought, you never want to go against Alabama.
Well, after listening to your reasoning last week, I thought, man, I'm toast on that pick. That's the one I'm not going to get.
And it was Texas, it's a lot of talk and then let down, but
it's been 14 years of talk and let down. It really has. I mean, that's their track record. So yeah, it was. I mean, that was just a hopeful pick. I was gushing over that game. That was exciting football.
It was a great game, and honestly, I was rooting for Texas, even though I had picked Alabama. I got no money on the line, so I was rooting for Big 12 here. And then let's see. Then Houston and Rice. That was a great pick for an upset. I looked at the score. It was 28-0, I think.
It was a game. It was what was that? Double overtime?
Yeah, double overtime.
Yeah.
That's when I turned it on, and I was just like, okay, Houston can't lose this now. And fair enough, they found a way. And then Nebraska, Colorado. I didn't want to get caught up in the hype with Colorado. They had no run game, and I thought now they're going to meet a real defense and maybe running on that high of beating TCU, maybe come back down to earth. I was wrong. It looked like in the, through the first couple of quarters that maybe, but you look at that when you have a high defense and a high powered offense going against a strong defense. I think over the course of 4 quarters, eventually you're going to find those holes and there's going to be breakdown with defense. And I think that's what happened. They just wore them down and then
Yeah.
just kept coming.
Yeah. Impressive stuff from Colorado. And,
Absolutely.
but man, I'll tell you, I've been picking games every week, either, on just in my head going through who I think is going to win or formally picking games. I've never gotten them all right, ever. I cannot believe that this happened. Don't read into it. I will go 0-14 one of these weeks to counterbalance this. So I'll take it. I'll take a run on the table with some of these easier preseason matchups. I don't know if our matchups are too difficult this week either, but yeah, somehow the dominoes just kind of fell the right way last week.
Well, I think we will have a lot in common, but this next week, let's see here. Can I make it to the next one? So I'll keep a running total. So right now you're +4 on me, and
I'll take it.
And actually, that should be week 2. So my bad there. We didn't pick week 1, so I'll modify that. But yeah, so you're up 4. We'll hopefully week 3 will go my way. So anyway, so let's move on now to our picks for the week. So now we're on. Let's start with BYU Arkansas. This not only is this one of the the big game for us as BYU fans is going into this week, but it's one of the better games of the whole weekend. Not a whole lot of interesting matchups coming on week 3. So in some ways, I'm almost surprised that we're only on ESPN2.
I know. There's really not a ton going on in college football this week. This is always that tune-up week, right? Everybody schedules maybe a softer program before they get into conference play and get their players healthy. So there's a handful of really good ones. I like this matchup. It's going to be fun. We'll really see who both teams are this week after they both had a couple tune-up games.
Yeah. So is there a chance for revenge this week? In some ways, this kind of reminds me of another top program that came into Provo, embarrassed us, and then the following return game in the opponent's house. This was Wisconsin. BYU went in and found a way to pull out the win. This is a game we actually watched together. So is there a chance that BYU could go in and shock Arkansas? I mean, they've got at LSU in week 4. Is there a chance that these first 2 weeks with tune-up and they're already looking past us at LSU?
Yeah, there's a chance. And I like us better than FPI at 21%. I don't know that I give it over 50% chance necessarily, but I think there's a good chance because I think Arkansas's offense has struggled more than they anticipated. You got KJ Jefferson, who is so good. He's so good. And he struggled a little bit against Kent State. I mean, still played well, but under 200 yards passing. Their star running back, the Rockets, not going to be playing. So there's some things there from an offensive standpoint that play in our favor. Their defense has had a field day living off of turnovers. We don't turn the ball over that much. Does that play in our favor? Does that mean we're about to cough up the ball because we haven't played great defenses yet? Those are the types of things that will play out in this game. I think we certainly have a chance because I don't really know who Arkansas is yet. I think they're pretty good. They're a big, mean, fast, athletic defense. They're a very athletic offense. I don't know how well they're going to execute because it seems like that's where they were missing against Kent State is they've got all the tools and it just wasn't coming together. So we'll see which Arkansas program shows up. Maybe they're looking past us to LSU and we catch them on a down week because I think they're athletically superior to us. Can we out execute them? Is probably the only way we can get through this week.
That's exactly what I was going to say. We know that they're going to have superior athletes and more depth, and that is where we cannot beat ourselves. We saw an improvement with fewer penalties this last game, so that was a move in the right direction. But it's not just penalties. I mean, it's just knowing the play, having the block set, having everyone being on the same page and working in concert. And so can we do that on top of that scheming? And it's also hard because they got new offensive and defensive coordinators. And so when you
Yeah.
say we don't know who they are, we really don't. You look at the stats over the first two games. Again, both teams playing lighter schedules so far. So there's a lot of questions to answer on both sides. But you look at it, stats are pretty similar. We're lower on the rushing yards, but we know Sam Houston, who looks like maybe a better defense than we initially thought. I mean, it was only Air Force, but Air Force can put up points. And so in their week 2 matchup, but and then also last week where we know we just they were selling out on the run and we just took advantage of it through the air. So it's hard to say, but numbers are pretty similar. I don't know, a lot of question marks for me though. I hate to do this, but being realistic, I still think that the Razorbacks take this one.
Yeah, and I feel the same way with you about the run game. I'm not concerned about BYU's run game for 2 reasons. One, A-Rod is excellent. He's shown in the past he knows how to adjust. That's a great offensive coordinator. And number 2, this offense is a little different than what we've had in the past. It's not 2021 when you've got Algier back there and it's a 50-50 or run heavy offense. Slovis is going to be pass heavy. I've noticed BYU commits to the pass. They pass on first down a lot. They want to throw the ball. You need a complementary run game. I don't think you're going to have an excellent run game out of BYU, but that doesn't concern me. You need a complementary run game, something that can make them respected enough to where you can open up some passing lanes for Slovis. And so I think the run game will get to where we need it to be. So I do expect BYU to be strong on offense in this game. I really do. I think it'll come together for them. They haven't opened up the playbook. Arkansas hasn't opened up the playbook. I think you'll see BYU struggle defensively. Sam Houston has a bad offense. I mean, 80 yards against Air Force. I think their defense is better than we thought. I think their offense is worse than we thought. And so I'm actually going to say a high-scoring game here. And just to add some contrast between you and I'm going to say the Cougars are going to win it in last-minute thrilling fashion, 45-42.
And I wouldn't rule it out for anyone that thinks they know what's going to happen going into this game. I think they're nuts because there are all those question marks, and I think BYU definitely could do it. We have the pieces. I would love to see Epps come back. He had a field day last year. I actually recently rewatched the condensed highlights of that, like a half-hour version, and I just watched how many good plays there were. Of course, Puka is not walking through those doors for us. He's a little busy right now because the whole world has learned this weekend, but and he obviously had a great game, but Epps too. And so it'd be great to have him back and give us a little bit of a spark in that regard. I have a question though. What is, because speaking about that game, I noticed in some of the highlights, and that's where I realized maybe some of the differences between Slovis and then Jaron Hall and even Zach Wilson is, I don't know if I've seen a lot of those throws. Like he has a laser and he can fit the ball into tight holes, but I don't know if I've seen it where he's dropped it, just with that touch where on those long passes where you can just drop it right where it needs to be where the defender can't get it. And I don't know if I have, in prep for the season, I watched a lot of Slovis highlights and things, but I just don't know if I saw a whole lot of that in there. And I don't know if that's part of his game because that's been a big part of, of course we've had special receivers to go out there and get it too. And I think we still got some good guys that can, certainly catch the ball. So is that something that we're going to be missing from our passing game?
Yeah, it's hard to say because you had that with Wilson and then you had that with Hall, and it just seems seamless. And Slovis is going to be a different quarterback. So I've noticed that as well. He throws the ball really hard. I mean, that is a laser 20 yards downfield. And I think Lassiter missed one right in his hands. I think Rex missed one that you just wouldn't expect. They were right there in the breadbasket. You'd think those guys would catch that. They're great receivers. Does he need to put a little more touch on the ball? That's a great question. I'd like to see it more on the downfield throws because they're going to need chunk yardage if they're going to win this game. a much more intelligent analyst than I would have to break that down. Check out John Beck's videos. Maybe he's got a word or two on that. But I did notice that as well. He throws the ball really hard. He's got a cannon. It's you want that, right? He can make all the throws anywhere on the field, but does he need to balance that out with some touch? Maybe we'll have to see. He's so accurate, and it was odd to see those drops when guys were right there. I mean, he had probably 75, 80 yards left out there on the field, especially if you count the interception that should have been a touchdown. I mean, he's easily throwing for 400, 450 with just a couple changes there. So Slovis is special. I'm excited to see him against elevated competition like this and really see what he's got.
Yeah, I'm excited. Regardless, I think because this is our first true test. We've had a couple tune-up games. I really am excited to see us go out there and compete at this level and see what our guys have. So, all right. So you're saying BYU, and boy, I hope you're right on this one.
I'm going to be a homer because we're getting slaughtered the second half of the season. Watching teams on this past weekend made me realize we're going to have a hard time getting bowl eligible, harder than I thought. I thought we'd get Kansas comfortably. I thought we'd get Cincinnati. Those two teams scare me now. Texas looks daunting. TCU's going to play angry this year. I feel like the teams that are struggling a little bit, Baylor, Houston, we don't have on the schedule. UCF just lost their quarterback. Does that make them an easier opponent? I don't know. I mean, those types of teams we don't have on the schedule, so we may just draw a really tough Big 12 schedule, and I don't know. We've got to pick up a couple of these road wins if we want to get bowl eligible. So this is another pick with my heart than my head, but I hope we can pull it off.
Well, me too. Yeah, I actually in my preseason picks I had us only winning 5 games, and so I started getting really optimistic right at the end, thinking we could do this. But now that we've seen Cincy and Kansas in action, it's certainly going to be tougher. Although that Oklahoma State game at the end of the year, I mean, maybe they'll figure some things out by then. But that's another one that potentially we pick up.
Yeah, there is, and this is what I love about college football. You start out and somebody's really hot for the first 3 games of the year and then tanks and they're beatable after that, and somebody finishes strong at the end of the year. You just don't know who it's going to be, and I think we'll catch a couple of them. I think Texas Tech is way more talented than what they've shown, but we've got them at home. Do we have a shot there? I mean, there's some games there that we can still pick up, but as always, the path you think you can follow is not necessarily the path we'll take, because different teams are better than you think. And to me, that's Kansas and Cincinnati. I just didn't expect them to be this good. And who knows? Maybe after Arkansas, we feel like, yeah, we're pretty good. We can hang with them. But we'll see. We'll see this Saturday.
It's going to be a good one, hopefully. All right. So we have another matchup. And so, again, most of these Big 12 games are not going to be the most intriguing, but we've got Kansas State and Missouri, which actually has the potential to be good. This is a former Big 12 rivalry. And what do you make of it?
Yeah, I think Kansas State is underrated. They're an excellent program. I think they're top 10 this year. Super excited to see Kansas State versus Texas. We may see it twice, once in the season, once in the championship. Missouri coming off a squeaked by in their win against Middle Tennessee State. Not looking great. Now this is at Missouri, so that's going to play into their favor. But I don't know if the crowd's gonna show out and really support, lend their voice to this. Missouri is a program they've had a hard time year over year. If Missouri was coming off of a strong year and struggled against Middle Tennessee State, I'd be more apt to pick them or say this is a toss-up. But I think Kansas State wins comfortably.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to be much. I think it's one of those games that could start off, through the first quarter, maybe half of the second quarter, and eventually, I think, if at all, and then Kansas State's going to run away with it, I think. So, all right, Baylor. They've been surprised. I mean, this is 0-2 teams, and Baylor's been surprised already. What did you make of the Utah game?
So disappointed for Baylor. And what was with the crowd? No one showed up to that game. I know it's hot in Texas. I know it's 105 degrees, but this is Baylor football. Besides Chip and Joanna Gaines, what else is there in Waco, Texas? It's Baylor football, and no one showed up to the game against a top 15 opponent, and they almost won. You got to think if the crowd's there, maybe they can pull that out. I don't read too much into the PI at the end of the game. It was obviously PI, but that doesn't mean that they're going to get it in the end zone the next time. Um, they coughed up one that they could have had at home. Yeah, it was sad for Baylor because I was really impressed with that performance. I was watching most of the game. Really enjoying that showing by Baylor. Utah's uh, comes away with a. I mean, that's a good win. You don't have your starting quarterback. You struggle on the road in the heat. And they got away with one there. We'll see how Utah does in conference play. But mostly I was just sad for Baylor. That would have been great for the program.
Yeah, I think Utah, again, they were coming off a real high from the Florida game, and I think they came back down to earth in this game a little bit. But whether they have deficiencies on offense or whatever, you do learn something about a team in those kinds of moments, and the fact that they were able to pull out that win in a difficult environment. Well, I mean, the crowd wasn't crazy, but hot environment, they're down, and they found a way to come back and win that game. Says a lot. So it's a bummer. I was pulling for Baylor, and it's too bad that their fans didn't come out because they still have a lot of season left. And if that one loss was enough to turn them off, then that's disappointing.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's interesting. I was looking at this here. And maybe it's longer, but they've lost their last 5 games going into last year. That's
Wow.
that was surprising. This is a team that
Yeah.
was at the top of the Big 12 just a couple of years ago. So
Yeah.
interesting, but yeah, bummer.
Got to
Outcome.
assume they win this week, right?
Yeah, I was going to say,
Put that in the win
on the
column.
record.
I think they'll get out some frustration on poor Long Island University Sharks, but yeah, give them a W this week.
Okay, to be clear, we're both picking Baylor. So, all right, Iowa State and Ohio Bobcats. So this is one that could potentially be a trap game for Iowa State, coming off of a rivalry game and going to an opponent that at their house that is potentially could be overlooked, but maybe a little bit better than we give them credit for just off of name brand.
It could be. It could be. I see Iowa State bouncing back in this one, getting out some frustration against Ohio. Uh, they lost that game against Iowa. Tough game, tough rivalry game. Um, and boy, if they let down and lose to Ohio, look out. The season could skid away from them pretty quick. You worry about them not being able to win once they get into conference play if they lose this game. It's going to be an uphill battle for them anyway. I like Iowa State in this one. Could be a trap game, but less than a trap game. I think if they lose this one, it just says that team is not. I don't want to say a team's thrown in the towel, but they've got some deeper issues in that program to fix if they come off the rivalry game and then lose to Ohio and jump into conference play.
Yeah, I think with the way they competed in that game, at the end of the day, they lost a lot of talent and their depth is a little thin. And so to lose a relatively close game, I mean, against a major rival, I think shows that the team is still playing with a lot of heart. And I think that I think that you're right, that they'll still be able to find a way to pull it off against Ohio. I think they'll pull it together. I think once they get into conference play, it may be a different story, but I think it's too soon to start counting them out yet.
Agreed.
Okay. Oklahoma, Tulsa.
Man, FPI really doesn't like Tulsa in this. I'd give them a slightly better shot than that, but just slightly. Oklahoma didn't look as good last week, but still strong. Came away with the win. We'll see what their offense does against Tulsa. I can't imagine. I know this is an in-state rivalry, and Tulsa's really going to be up for it. It's at Tulsa, I believe. So this is home field advantage. But I just don't see Tulsa pulling this out. I got Oklahoma.
Yeah, I think I wasn't too surprised to see Oklahoma come back down to earth last week. It would be easy to overlook SMU, and they could do the same with Tulsa. But even if it ends up being closer than they'd prefer, I still think there's not much chance that they lose that one. So here's another one. This is a little bit more interesting now with Plumlee injured. What do you think of the Wildcats here?
This is the one that I'm tempted to go for because Villanova's put up some points. I mean, 50 plus points in both their games. It's only 2 games. Um, so does Villanova realistically have a shot? Probably not. UCF is a really strong team. If they can get Plumlee back, they'll vie for a, you know, top five, top six max out of the Big 12. I mean, they could really have a run here. But losing your starting quarterback's tough. I think they rally around him. I think this is really going to galvanize the team in what could have been a trap game. I think they'll come out and win one for Plumlee and just stick it to Villanova.
Boy, I was surprised with that Boise State game, how close that was. And it came down to that field goal. Of
Yeah,
course, Boise couldn't slow him down on that last drive, but
playing on the
I was
Smurf turf at night, man, that's no joke.
no. And I understand that, but I just thought, and I don't know if it was just difficult environment or misreading on UCF or on Boise. Maybe I wasn't giving Boise State enough credit, but that was a closer game than expected. But I
Yeah,
don't think UCF will lose. I think, even being down Plumlee, I think that they've got enough depth and talent that they're going to still win this one. Okay, here's one. Cincy and Miami of Ohio.
yeah.
You're still betting on the Bearcats?
I'm still betting on the Bearcats, at least in this one. In state, I don't know if you call this a rivalry, but an in-state game. Um, Miami of Ohio has had their moments, right? They've had some years. I don't know that this is necessarily one of them. If Cincy hadn't looked so good in their first couple matchups, I'd call this a trap game. I'd be a little bit more willing to look at Miami of Ohio, but since he's got this one, they've been really strong out of the gate.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm finally coming around to Cincy, unfortunately, which is making me very nervous for our matchup. It's one of our games that I was like, "There's no way BYU loses this one." As our first
We got
true
them at home on a Friday.
at home Friday night. It's going to be, the atmosphere is going to be wild. So I still like BYU in that, but it is making me nervous. Okay, Oklahoma State, South Alabama. What do you think?
I'm concerned for Oklahoma State overall. They kind of decide on a quarterback. I know Gundy knows what he's doing on offense more than almost anyone else in the country, so I have no credentials to question him. But man, how long can you run 3 quarterbacks, a 3 quarterback system? I just settle on somebody, and it's almost like his son's playing the best, but he doesn't want to name his son starting quarterback because he's the walk-on, he's the coach's son. But you got to settle on somebody, and I think he will. You know, Gundy's an offensive genius. He'll figure it out. But that makes me nervous for their season. Didn't have the best time in the transfer portal, I think. And he reminds me a little bit of Dabo Sweeney in that he's just sort of griping about the state of college football, not really embracing NIL and not really embracing the transfer portal. And you can do that. You can get by for a couple of years, but college football is going to shift and move on. And I worry this is an inflection point for Oklahoma State. They've got to get with it. And they haven't looked great in their first couple matchups. I think they still beat South Alabama more because of Gundy's experience than anything else. Because I think a less experienced coach could get caught in this game because South Alabama can play. They'll push them, but I think Oklahoma runs away with it comfortably in the end.
Yeah, I would guess, this is no in sort of intel or anything, but my feeling is we'll see more of the same in this game from them playing 3 quarterbacks and doing a lot of the same things and maybe even struggling early on. And then I think they'll still win this. It'll be interesting to see though, once they get to Big 12 play, if they'll finally settle on a quarterback, if they're just, playing with their food, so to speak, right now and just kind of experimenting beforehand. So I don't know, but yeah, I think they'll still pull this one out, but you don't like them for the long haul. It is concerning.
Yeah.
Texas Tech, they've had 2 very heartbreaking losses so far this season. I can't. Their losses were very different than Baylor's losses. At least overall. So
For sure.
I don't see them, losing this game, even though Tarleton can put up points, but so should Texas Tech this game.
Tarleton State was the one school on the schedule this week that I had not heard of. So shame on me for my lack of college football knowledge and the rich history of the Tarleton State Texans, but I gotta imagine Texas Tech is gonna release the fury this week and just take it out on them, win by 50, and jump into conference play after a couple of frustrating losses for them.
Yeah, absolutely. That was another bummer of a game, but it was an exciting one nonetheless. So West Virginia showed that, I think, after a game that they kind of hung with Penn State, and then until you got to the second half when Penn State pulled away, and then Duquesne, they showed that they still have some talent. They can still do some things. Now they face another tougher opponent in Pitt. What are you thinking here?
Backyard brawl. You got to love
Yeah.
this game. It feels a little bit like Coach Neal is coaching for his job right now, and you hate to say that. I wish college football was a little bit more patient, but he's had 5 years to build the program. You're going into this game, and to me, this is going to be one of those turning points for the fans. And I think his team's going to rally around him. I do. I've got West Virginia in this one, surprisingly. It's going to be an upset because I think Pitt is a strong team, but they're playing at West Virginia, and I just feel like it's one of those where the team feels a make or to break it. The pressure can put you over the edge, or it can make you crumble. I think West Virginia will step up and get the victory here.
Rivalry game. Anything can happen. It was a great game last year, one which Keaton Slovis participated in, and West Virginia. It was a bummer. They saw that one slip away, and now they're showing that they have heart. And when you say that it feels like Neal Brown is coaching a little bit for his job, no, it definitely feels like he's coaching for his job. I mean, that is one hot seat there. After last week, I don't know if the game against Cincy, because I didn't watch any of it, just a few highlights. Unfortunately, I don't know if I get CW, but I heard the quality of the production was pretty low. But anyway, I don't know if it says more about Pitt or Cincy, but I do think that West Virginia, with everybody writing them off this season, I thought, well, they still got a lot of talent. Yes, they have a lot of holes, but they're not. They have issues, but they're not completely down and out. And I think they're going to come and play with heart. And this is one where it's going to be at home against their rival, still remembering the game last year. And actually, before the season, I wanted to pick West Virginia. I didn't have the guts. So I picked Pitt in my official picks for the season. But now I'm flip-flopping. I'm also going with West Virginia.
I got to flip-flop.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
2 games to assess things. And I'd love to see West Virginia win this game. But we'll see. I mean, that's the thing about rivalry games is really, truly anything can happen, no matter how good or bad either team is.
Yeah, absolutely.
As we know from experience.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so here's another one. Wyoming upset Texas Tech. Texas coming off of a high of beating Alabama. Yes, they're back at home, but hearing a lot of good things about themselves in national media. Could this be a trap game? Could the Cowboys have a little bit more up their sleeve?
Well, let me tell you this. Texas will struggle more than anybody wants to see them. And there'll be all the conversation of, was Texas really back? Was that? It's inevitable. You just hit a peak in the program over the last 14 years. They peaked on Saturday. That's not to say they won't continue up. I'm not saying they peaked like they're going to go down the rest of the season, but in the trajectory of the last 14 years, you just hit a high point. I think they're going to come down a little bit. I don't think Wyoming's going to beat them. I think it's going to be much closer. They're going to have to sweat this one out into the third or fourth quarter and then pull away late and win comfortably. But it's just, you see this so many times when the team comes off a big victory and they just have a bit of a slump. And so that's how I see Texas playing this one out. But I do think in the end they're going to win this one.
Yeah, I think I agree with everything you said. I still think Texas comes out. I don't think that I think Wyoming covers the spread on this one. I don't think that they lose by 4+ touchdowns. So
yeah,
I think they'll come out and show heart, and then I think near the end, then Texas will pull away from it. So, but should be a good one. I'd like to see Wyoming, go in there and put up a fight.
Yeah.
So here's our first Big 12. true Big 12 because we've had a couple of preview of future Big 12
Yeah.
matchups last week, but we got our first true Big 12 matchup of the season in TCU and Houston. So TCU is maybe, they showed some holes, maybe not everything everybody expected them to be going into the season, which is kind of what I thought. I thought, with enough turnover, they're still going to be good, but can't expect them to be the exact same team. And then Houston, who's going to be sporadic. I think they've got talent. We're going to continue to see ups and downs. I wouldn't be surprised if we see them beat Texas or Kansas State and then go and lose to, a down Iowa State or Cincy, or I'm trying to think of who's worse than them in the Big 12, right? BYU, BYU's done. So, lose to other teams, so I think that their variance is wide. So what do you make of this matchup?
Well, I still see Houston as my bottom dwellers this year. Um, yeah, I think Dana Holgerson is having a hard time elevating that program. When they pulled him in as head coach, I thought, oh my goodness, look out. Houston is going to be dominant for years. Because he chooses to leave West Virginia and go to Houston, and it's just not coming together. They've struggled through their first two games of the season. TCU has a huge chip on their shoulder. I would have liked Houston more in an upset, to be honest, if TCU had handled Colorado comfortably and Colorado wasn't as good as some people thought they would be. I could see TCU wandering in here and just getting surprised by Houston, but TCU is still, I mean, they've got something to prove more than a lot of other programs. And I agree with your assessment of TCU. They're not going to be, you can't be last year's squad. It's just not going to happen. But they're good. I think they're a much better team than Houston, and I just think there's so much hunger and motivation from that TCU squad after the way they started the season, that they're going to come in here and take care of business against Houston. I don't see them losing this game.
Yeah, I think TCU is going to be laser focused. I think they're going to be driven by that loss to Colorado and desperate to turn the narrative around, which makes me less hopeful about the BYU matchup. I thought at that point they'd be rolling. They'd have, they wouldn't have lost yet. They'd have several wins under their belt, and that potentially BYU could sneak in there while TCU is looking forward to some other matchups and pull one off. And I think that's going to be harder to do now. So yeah, I want to go with Houston. I really thought about it. I thought, could they come in and surprise us this week? And I just don't think that's going to happen. I think Sonny Dykes is a good enough coach to get his team back on track. Feels like kind of a must win. If TCU lost that game, it would.
Yeah, I think that's spelling doom for the program. So I agree. They're feeling that every week right now.
All right, the Jayhawks first.
Jayhawks, man, I like watching Kansas football.
Yeah.
And that is a weird confession. But man, they are awesome. Like Jalen Daniels is so much fun to watch. The brand of offensive football is really fun. I think they beat Nevada. I don't think Kansas is an unstoppable team this year. They've struggled in some odd moments. I think their defense still has some holes. I don't think their defense is as good as they were hoping in these first couple matchups of. I heard a lot of the Kansas defense is back, and it's better. It had to be better than last year. But so I'm not sold on Kansas as a dominant program yet per se, but definitely enough to take care of Nevada. I'm comfortable picking against Kansas in some situations, and we know what it's like to go to Nevada and lose lose a game you're supposed to win. But I don't think this is the Nevada of old where they're an upstart and surprising people. I think Nevada's struggling this year.
Yeah, what's funny about Kansas is I don't know if there's another team in all of college athletics that I have such a wide variance in how I feel about their football team versus their basketball team. Their football team, I feel like right now everyone can get behind, like, yeah, go Kansas. Like, it's a feel-good story. They're coming from the bottom. Yeah. They're fun to watch, and versus their basketball team, everyone's like, oh, it's Kansas again, and you got to root against the blue blood. Whereas here, you're rooting for this kind of up and coming team, and it's a good story. And yeah, Kansas isn't going to have trouble in this game. So unless they're caught looking forward to BYU, I don't think that'll happen. Okay, so that wraps up Big 12. We don't have any top 25 matchups this week, but we do have some intriguing ones. What do you think of Washington at Michigan State?
So Washington has been crazy good. I would put Washington as a top 5 team. It's going to be Washington versus USC for the Pac-12 championship, even more so than Oregon. I mean, Pac-12 is oddly good this year, ironically, in their final year. They got a lot of good teams, but Washington has looked so good. Penix is a legit Heisman contender, and Michigan State's just got a lot of distraction that they got to get past, and so I don't see the Spartans being galvanized to victory here. I'm going with Washington.
Oh, yes, it's unfortunate. So I'd love to see Sparty, pull this one off, and it's too bad. It seemed like, they're really trying to turn things around. Last year was a bit disappointing, but I don't think, like you said, there's too much distraction. And regardless, even without the distraction, I think Washington is too good, and so that's going to be a tough one for Sparty there. But all right, here is another very fun rivalry matchup that we've got for this week.
Yeah, yeah. Um, this is going to be a great one. This is as close to a good top 25 matchup as you'll get. Florida has something to prove, and I think this is almost them willing themselves to victory. I've got Florida in a thriller, just barely winning against Tennessee because it's in the swamp. If it wasn't in the swamp, I'd take Tennessee, but I just feel like Tennessee has missed a half step. It's kind of like TCU. You had that monster year. It's tough to replicate. I think Heupel is an amazing coach. I think Tennessee's got this incredibly bright future. I think they're going to be a dominant program in 4 or 5 years. I think they were just a little ahead of schedule last year, with Hendon Hooker and just some amazing play from their offense. They'll get there. But I think Florida in a surprise upset is going to win this one.
You make a great point. Tennessee is probably taking at least a half a step backwards from last year. But after what we saw from Florida in week 1, I don't have a lot of confidence in them. It doesn't matter if they're playing in the swamp, if they're playing, it doesn't matter where they're playing. I do not have a lot of confidence in them until we see a little bit more. So I am sticking with the Volunteers on this one. So, and
Not a bad pick.
why are all the good games being played at the same time? You've got this, the Backyard Brawl, and BYU all playing roughly the same
It's
time.
the night lineup. It's the night lineup. They got to spread
There's
that out
no
better.
other, intriguing games, going on throughout the day, and all the good ones are at the same time. So I don't know how I'll navigate that. Stick with SEC, LSU at Mississippi State.
Yeah, we don't know enough about Mississippi State for me to pick them. LSU is a good program. I know they got trounced by Florida State, but Chip Kelly's a great coach. LSU is a great football team. They may not be top 5. They may not be playoff bound this year, but I don't see Mississippi State just because we don't know enough about them. Really, boy, I just think the world of Coach Leach, and sad what happened there. And I hope they can have put a great year together for his legacy. But we just don't know enough about him.
Yeah, this is not one that would shock me if Mississippi State came out and won. But again, just like TCU, I think LSU is gearing up for a comeback here, and this is their chance. They've had 2 weeks to just stew on that that loss in week 1, and they know what people are saying about them, and I think they'll come out ready to play. And unfortunately, Mississippi State happens to be that next team on their schedule.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna also go with the Tigers on this one. So, all right. So I think we only differed on a few. So I don't even know if I have a chance to at least even things out this week. But
maybe I'll keep my lead by just replicating your picks and just play the game that way.
That's true.
I'm not accustomed to winning at the picks game. I got to run with it now.
I was tempted to pick, Houston or some other upsets just at a shot to get past you, but it's early enough in the season that I'd rather chip away. I'm not in desperation mode just yet. So
I could see that happening. We'll get into conference play. We're gonna have some toss-ups, and there's gonna be some tough picks. This week was a little too bread and butter. You can kind of go down and check mark most of those. I hope there's some upsets. That's what I love about college football. I don't see it happening as much this week as last, but who knows? Maybe some of those smaller schools will have some big wins, but I think next week we're really gonna get into conference play and some really fun games.
Yeah, I'm busy this week. I'm running a Spartan race, so the fact that there's no
Nice.
games on and they're not until the evening, that gives me time to
Perfect.
go out. I don't miss
Run the
anything.
race,
I get home,
relax.
shower, hop on the couch, just to turn on the game, get the kids to bed, and so, so works out nicely for me. And then, we got a big week 4 we can look forward to. But for now, week 3. So, all right. Well,
All right.
see how things go. Thanks for hopping on again, and please don't forget to like the video and subscribe, and make sure you catch all our picks for these upcoming weeks. And we will see you next time. Go Cougs.
Go Cougs.